So, what's the point of knowing this? In 2012, my business saw a 90% drop in revenue when our provincial government cancelled its support for the film industry in Saskatchewan. If I had taken my wife's advice and quit at that point, I'd be living quite comfortably today. Instead, I plowed all my resources into trying to diversify my company, paying out of my pocket to keep from laying off long-term staff I had already invested heavily in, and pursuing new technologies like live streaming video, augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. Alas, even though my competitors in larger centers were getting rich doing the same kinds of work, I was going deeper and deeper into debt as I searched for new customers. Back in 2003, we'd had blueprints drawn up to relocate my studio. At that point, the lease improvements were going to cost $1.3 million, and we decided it made more sense to continue renting our present location. My long-term strategy was still that it couldn't possibly take that many years for our business-friendly government to recognize that they were not participating in the hundreds of millions of dollars of production work happening in our neighboring provinces. But by 2019, I was out of money. This left me having to sell our house to pay back the banks for all the secured debt I had taken on as I doggedly kept my business going. Not every dream comes true, and that's because there's a better dream on its way. That's what I believe. For now, it was time to stop beating my head against the wall. At its peak, Talking Dog Studios employed about 24 people. Today it continues as a much smaller operation, with just myself and one other part-time employee handling the audio work. Hi, Kieran. With a few others to help from time to time as little bits of service work come up, I'm certainly leading a less stressful life now that I have cleared off my debt. It was also in 2012 that a popular YouTube science channel began attacking my 10th Dim channel, saying my content is nonsense, triggering hate mail for my project all over the internet. Remember all the doomsayers worried that 2012 was the end of the Mayan calendar? 2012 certainly did feel like a big change of trajectory happened for me within my probability space. All of this doesn't stop me from believing that there is still a better future coming. Sure, this is not the road I thought I was going to travel to get there, but get there I will, because I know that future already exists within Everett's many worlds. Psychobiologist and psychedelics researcher David J. Brown describes it as your perfected self whispering to you from the future. Looking out for number 1. How far should one's pursuit of happiness trump another's? To be clear, I am not advancing an argument for all-out hedonism, but I do like the phrase I was introduced to by a very smart fellow calling himself Alge Calypso: raise your hedonic tone. A person with elevated hedonic tone is more likely to enjoy the journey, a phrase which has been my favorite sign-off in my blog posts from the beginning. All this becomes even more complicated because my happiness can easily be my pleasure. When powerful people take their pleasure at the expense of those beneath them, is that just nature's way? The mighty take from the weak. That's how they became mighty. The equation seems simple enough. The reference frame someone uses changes what is deemed acceptable and what is not. Quantum mechanics pioneer Max Planck put it this way: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Do I just have to shift my perspective to see the better version of the universe? In a way, this is all about gravity. A mental push can influence the past in the same way a book can be mysteriously pushed off a shelf at some time before, as Nolan's Interstellar showed us. If we apply Feynman's sum over paths concept to this discussion, it shows us how there are many ways we could have gotten to where we are today, and if we can hook on to a wave with a better trajectory, we can change our future. It's all waves within fields. That's how science describes our reality. You are a wave, swimming through the fields of a constantly shifting probability space in the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is where general relativity and Maxwell's field equations are resolved, so we can visualize our own perception of the universe as a wave. The wave we are observing is the universe. From that beautifully complex wave function's outcome, your brain is constructing the reality you are observing. You can push that wave in a new direction within certain obvious limits. Understanding the degree to which you have this power is the point of this playground of ideas we are exploring here with me, a non-scientist with a curious mind. What does it mean when people talk about raising themselves to a new frequency? Each of us has a sample rate or a frame rate for our consciousness. That rate can change, theoretically all the way up to the highest sample rate possible, which is defined by Planck's constant. It was Planck who solved the riddle of why the divisions of our reality cannot be infinitely small, because if they were, then the energy of large masses like our Sun would be carried away with too large of a drain for the Sun to continue. To avoid this, Planck realized that at the smallest scale, these waves must break down into packets not capable of carrying any more than a defined amount of energy. That's as simple a definition of the Planck length as we can get to. It's the smallest slice of reality that could possibly be for the Sun to continue generating the amount of energy we observe it to be emitting. Ultimately, this means our universe has a frame rate, defined by packets of space-time that are the quanta of quantum physics. This is how a universe made of waves can give us point-like particles. Those points are observed within our flipbook universe, one Planck frame after another, creating the illusion of continuous motion we see around us. This frame rate is the highest frequency the universe can be sampled at. But the technologies behind film and television show us that less than 30 frames a second can still give us a reasonably smooth experience of continuity. There is certainly a huge spread between the duration of a Planck frame and the duration of a film frame. Are different living things sampling reality at different frame rates? Clearly, a bird seems to be operating at a higher frame rate of awareness than a sloth. Can different humans also be sampling reality at different frequencies? We see evidence of this around us every day. Watch some old clips of Robin Williams in his prime if you'd like to see a human being whose observations of the wave were obviously at a faster frame rate than most of the rest of us on this planet. Is the universe delightfully simple when viewed as a wave? Physicists like Neil Turok say yes it is. And right here, right now, is a point that observes the laws of a wave. Local realism is not a feature of our universe. Particles really can be connected outside of our local experience. And the realism we think we see, telling us a certain door was there before we looked at it, is replaced with a reality where absolutely everything before and after the now we are currently observing is nothing more than probabilistic waves that become point-like particles when you observe them.